Hello, YouTubers, and welcome back to another episode of Freedom Friday here on the Ohio Patriot Education Network YouTube channel. I'm, as always, your host here, the Ohio Patriot, and for today's episode, we are going to talk about how the DOJ, or Justice Department, wants to make trans people ineligible to buy guns, and basically break down the pros and cons of potentially such a ban, and who should really potentially be behind something like this is what it is, if it even becomes reality is what it is there, as well as breaking down what Big Pharma's role is in all these different massacres, from Columbine to Sandy Hook to the most recent one in Minnesota there. So before we get into all that, I do want to do a preview, because we do have a new knife I got in the other day. This was going to be part of Slicey Boy Saturday tomorrow, but I decided to do it today as what it is. So this was an interesting box that just came in, by the way. This knife only cost, I think it was just under 13 bucks. It's normally like 20 or so on Amazon. Pretty big box. Has the knife and a little paracord piece with it there, which is pretty cool. So, but yeah, this was a ZF Fias, I think I pronounce it, is the name of the company there. So this was the cheapest one that they had on sale right now. They have, I think there's two on sale. This one was just under 13. The other one was, I think, just under 14, I want to say, or maybe 15 or so. And everything else is like 20-something dollars. But got your box, got your knife inside of the package here. The one thing I do like about this one, comparing it to the Ret knives that I have, is they have a similar case they come in. And then we got a bunch more stuff in there, though, this time around. So we got their little monogram cloth for your cleaning your glasses, cleaning your knife, whatever it is there. We got a little instruction thing about how to properly use this safely, which I think is interesting. And then got a little desiccant pack, which I think I'm going to start keeping these around, just throw in my ammo. With my ammo is what it is there. So, and then got this cool little keychain piece there is what it is. This is the last one. Well, second to last one anyway. And then, obviously, the knife itself there's what it is in their little package. So yeah, this is a pretty cool knife. It's G10 grips on there. They feel really interesting in the hand. It almost feels like wallpaper or like paint or something on there. And then got your downwards pocket clip on the bottom there. It actually does feel pretty nice in the hand. Fits nice in the hand. Got this little proper opening there. And yeah, nice little gentleman's folder is what I call it there. So, this is D2 steel, obviously, on this, which I have one more coming in right now. That is it was DC. It's D53, I think is what it is, or DC53, something like that. Which apparently is D2. That's like way more powerful, and it's made in Japan. So yeah, that was pretty cool. I'm going to show everybody that. It seems like a pretty good blade from what I've used of it, and like I said, for 13 bucks, like it's not a bad deal at all, man. Especially when, normally sells for 20 something is what it is there. But anyway, on to the actual stories of the day, though. So, obviously, for those that haven't heard, it was, I believe, yesterday, there was a Breitbart article that came out talking about how the Justice Department now wants to ban any potentially wants to ban any trans-identifying individuals from being able to buy firearms in this country, which, I've seen it from both sides of the aisle at this point, where it's, some people are like, oh, it's a slippery slope to blah, 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 and the rest of our rights are going to get taken away. And there's other people that are like, you realize that weeds are prohibited already is what it is, right? And that's the thing, like, nobody's really fighting for Graham Act like I am. I am fighting on the network side right now to get one passed here at a state level in Ohio, because there is absolutely no reason for marijuana to interfere with gun rights in this country. That being said, what we really need to be discussing is not the fact that you have these people being banned from ownership potentially, or being permitted persons for that matter. What we need to be discussing is that you have a bunch of clearly psychotically insane people out there right now who need mental help, is what it is. They need to be forced institutionalized, is what it is in many cases. And as we all know, if you actually look at the 4473s, they've updated those recently in the last year or two, is what it is, or I think it's actually 2 years ago they updated them, is what it was, to put like trans stuff on there. And if I'm not mistaken, if you answer yes to the trans questions on there, it's supposed to be automatic prohibition, basically, where you're not being able to buy, is what it is there. Which obviously, didn't work there in Minnesota, because as far as we're aware now, that fucking nutter went out like a week beforehand and got the stuff, if even that long. It might have been a few days even for that matter. Before they did that massacre there at that church. Which, like I said before, and I'll say it again now, thank God that piece of shit was standing outside the church and shooting into the church and wasn't actually inside of the church there as it was. Because had they been inside, I guarantee it would have been a double-digit body count at that point, dude. Like, every single one of those kids that got shot probably would have been killed at that point then. So, and there's been a bunch of other revelations that have come out since then about how this person had a supposed furry girlfriend, but then you look at the picture of the people that were, that they're claiming was the chick in this case. And it was, let's see if I can find it here real quick. Yeah, like this is the picture that they were claiming was the person's significant other / girlfriend, and it clearly, to me anyway, looks like a damn man in a dress up there is what it is. So, I think it's just, like, that's the thing, and I think a lot of these people that are going to be transgender, it's just a bunch of gay dudes with more steps is what it is, dude, for real. Or is a bunch of lesbians with more steps and stuff like that is what it is there. Or even in some cases, straight people with more steps is what it is. But yeah, it's completely insane is what it is there. So, and it's just sad either way. And I know there also is this talk as well about how some people, I heard this a few times since last night, people saying, oh, it's actually just, them trying to essentially get like moms demand action types and stuff out there to support gun rights now is what it is. Or be like, oh, you can't ban the trans from owning guns because that's unconstitutional, bro. So maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But I find it interesting how quickly you have some people coming to the decision and being like, no, they should be banned. And then the people are being like, no, they shouldn't be banned because, it's a slippery slope for the rest of us. And that's what it is, which is kind of where I fall is what it is there. But at the same time, I'm more to the fact of, and I liked Legally Armed America's take on this last night, which was, his point was it should not even be the DOJ that's doing this stuff right now. It should be the Health and Human Services side of things with RFK, doing a breakdown of like gender dysphoria and stuff like that, and like proving that yes, it is in fact a mental illness and stuff like that. And if that be the case, like people that have this gender dysphoria should be the ones disqualified. Because that's the thing, right? Like if you look at what we see as transgender people in this country right now is what it is, or just across the world for that matter, not all of them have gender dysphoria, dude. Because truthfully, I believe the definition of gender dysphoria is like, just kind of being insane essentially is what it is, and thinking you're like, something you're not basically, and wanting to like take steps to like cut things off yourself and stuff like that. Whereas I've seen some of these transgender folks where they won't go that far. They'll just, they'll get on some hormones or something like that, and then they won't do any surgery is what it is. And then you have some like Blair White, that is like probably the most known like right-wing trans person at this point, who, as far as I'm aware, that person's pretty much fine is what it is. Like they're not like completely psychotic or anything like that. And they're a gunner for many reasons. One of the biggest ones is the fact they were attacked by the left that were a bunch of trans people and stuff like that. And, gays, etc. there. And they wanted to be armed is what it is there to protect themselves. And as they should be, honestly. And the thing about that is that when you have stuff like that, and you just have a person that does like a couple like facial reconstruction surgeries and stuff like that, it's like, yeah, it's semantics, honestly. But like true gender dysphoria would be something like Jazz Jennings, honestly, whose crazy psychotic mother was 100% the reason that that kid went from being a male to a female, or as close as they could be, basically. And it's ironic because if you actually look at the progression of that whole reality series that they gave them and stuff like that, by the end of that whole thing, like, I think it was like 3 or 4 years ago now is what it was, they stopped filming those things when they went off to Harvard is what it was. And it was literally them dating a woman now. So, again, it's straight with more steps at that point is what it is, dude. But that's the problem, is you have these people that are like so gender confused in their own minds is what it is, that they'll sit there and they'll keep pushing this stuff because they realize if they go back at all, that they themselves are actually going to be worse for wear is what it is. So, however, that being said, in the case of the nut in Minnesota recently, that person was demonically evil, 100%. And I believe, truthfully, personally, from what I've looked into with that one and I've seen some stuff from InfoWars and Alex Jones and stuff recently about that. So, first of all, those don't know that one. The kid who committed that massacre there, I say kid, but they're like in their 20s. They were in their 20s anyway, because they're now a were is what it is. But yeah, that fucking psychotic lunatic, his father was, as far as I'm aware, and maybe still even might be, CIA of some kind, which leads us down the rabbit hole to potentially MK Ultra is what it is there, and the potential of mind control and stuff like that, which, you know, there is a very real possibility several of these shooters have been on that stuff as well, too, for that matter. Have been part of the MK Ultra mind control programs and stuff like that, because it was about, I want to say sometime in the last 10 years or so, you had somebody that was government at the time come out and specifically say that, yes, these programs did exist from, you know, X time period to X time period, and I believe it was like the 1970s or early 80s or something like that when they claimed they stopped, basically. But the thing is, they never stopped those things, dude. They simply, if we were at this level right here, they went down like 3 or 4 levels down to here is what it is. And those programs are still continuing on to have like activation of people and stuff like that over the decades. And it makes a lot more sense when you start looking at that stuff as a possibility and a real, you know, deal on that one. Not to mention when you start including the psych drugs like Big Pharma SSRIs, you know, your antidepressants, Xanax, Zoloft, all the other stuff that they shove down kids' throats from, you know, 5 to 15 or so, and expect them not to go psychotic when literally the side effects of these pills, these actual murder pills by the big pharmaceutical companies, specifically have on their labels as side effects homicidal and suicidal thoughts and actions. So the fact that we're not even having that discussion at all about how big pharma needs to be brought to task criminally at this point for that kind of stuff, when there was a study that came out here in the past year or so that did, I believe it was, I want to say it was a several-year study, but it basically studied every single school shooting since like 1990 or something like that, and or maybe even like late 80s for that matter. But it was like 35 to 40 years worth of massacres basically at schools that happened in this country. And what these people that were researching this paper and wrote this paper discovered was that every single one of these mass shootings can be tied straight back to SSRI drugs, is what it is. So, yeah, it might not be particularly the trans people that are the problem right now. It might just be all the damn psych drugs that are on, is what it is there. So, and that would make sense too, because I know I've seen the video, and that's what that dude was saying in their manifesto videos. It was about how they don't want to be trans anymore and stuff like that. And even looking at when they were at the gun shop, because there's a video that came out today about that, of them being at the gun store, like looking at ammo and stuff like that. It looked like a guy, dude. They were just some dude in there, is what it was. Like, if I walked into a gun shop and I saw this dude looking over at ammo, I was like, that's just some dude. And I would walk past him and go get whatever I wanted and leave, is what it is then. So, yeah, to think of like, oh, they could have been stopped from buying whatever, or the shop owner or whatever it was, or the employee that sold the guns to him or something like that would have been like, oh yeah, this person's X, Y, and Z. No, because I guarantee in the 4473 they probably wrote mail on there is what it is. And they probably just did whatever they had to do to basically get guns with it at that time. Now, granted, that being said, I know if you buy a certain number of firearms at once, it's supposed to trigger in the system for like an ATF knock on your door, basically. And I'm not sure what that actual number is in that case. Like, I know it used to be like, I think it was 2 or more handguns at once, or it was like several Like I think it was like maybe 3 or 4 different firearms at once or something like that. I know if you buy like a bunch of strip blowers at once, I think it's like 5 or 6 or more, something like that, it'll automatically trigger that thing. At least it did anyway in the system back in the day. So, and the main reason I know that is from hanging out with all the 2A guys over the last 5-6 years now is what it is. So, and finding that out secondhand from them is what it was, because either one of them had worked at the gun shop, or it was several of them that tried to buy like that's what it is there, and they're like, yeah, that's when it triggers basically if you get like this amount or whatever then. So, but it's interesting to me because obviously in this case in Minnesota, as far as we're aware, nothing ever triggered, which, maybe there was, because I know there was a video that came out here in about the last like 4 or 5 days now that was showing how there was at least a police interaction at this kid's house is what it is. And it makes me wonder, like, was this just another system fail, just like that one in California years ago with that nutcase who was the son of I think it was a Hollywood producer or something like that, and the guy was trying to kill his own dad and like a few other people there that he hated for life. And then he decided, oh, dad's out of the country or whatever, doing something now. And then he just decided to go on his killing spree. That's what it was, because in that case, and this, by the way, was before California had red flag laws like a decade ago. I think this was when Newsom was still lieutenant governor of California, because it would have been like 2013, 14, 12, something like that. Like, I think it was after Sandy Hook, honestly. So it's probably like 13 or 14, maybe 15 at most. And yeah, it was this dude, basically, he had a small arsenal in his bedroom there. The cops came to do a welfare check on him in that case, and then didn't bother to look into the bedroom at all, which is retarded at that point, honestly. It's like, yeah, well, why don't you look into his room, dude, and be like, hey, make sure he doesn't have anything or whatever. Because they could have done it. They could have probable cause at that point to do that stuff, obviously, if they're, if they're checking on his welfare and stuff like that, because his mom thought he was nuts, is what it is, or something. So, anyway. But yeah, they didn't do that, obviously, and then he ended up killing I believe it was his roommates at the time, were the first 3 people that were killed in that massacre, and then he ended up going outside, jumping into his vehicle, and he was just shooting random people on like the sidewalk and stuff is what it was. And I want to say in that case it was like 6 dead and a couple wounded or something like that. And of course that's what led directly to California passing red flag laws. And the reason I bring that up obviously is because when you look at Minnesota right now, since January 2024, Tim Walz, current governor of Minnesota, literally passed red flag laws in Minnesota back in January of 2024. Meanwhile, at the same time, he also turned Minnesota into a trans refuge in like a month or 2 after that's what it was then. So, I was trying to see if there was somebody on my door there is what it was. I just heard like a weird noise outside. So, plus I'm still kind of on edge from a week ago, and that fucking dude was stealing my electricity is what it is. Nothing's came of that since then, by the way, unfortunately, but I think it's just because the landlord's a lazy asshole is what it is. Doesn't do his fucking job and evict this motherfucker for that shit, because that should have been an evictable offense at this point, honestly. But it is what it is. Anyway, but going back to what I was saying, though. So basically, Minnesota's had this red flag law on the books for like a year and a half or so now is what it is. And of course, it did nothing to stop this massacre, just like they never did is what it is, dude, because the entire point of red flag laws in general, which, by the way, every single one of them is created by Michael Bloomberg and Moms Demand Action / Everytown. They're the ones that write this stuff. They're the ones that go and bribe Democrat lawmakers in blue states and red states, for that matter, to pass this bullshit. And thankfully, in the red states, it seems to get, knocked out of the park is what it is there, because people like myself are fighting against this shit is what it is. And, but yeah, so basically you have that be a thing there is what it is. But obviously, the issue that I personally have, too, as well, for that matter, is the fact that you have something called the Baker Act, which has been a known piece of legislation in all 50 states since like 1973, I think is what it is. And basically, for those who don't know what the Baker Act is, it's essentially red flag laws, minus them stealing your gun rights is there. It's essentially, if people think you're nuts, the cops think you're nuts, family thinks you're nuts, whatever the case be, they can basically call that in and be like, yeah, we're going to Baker Act this person. They put a 72-hour cycle hold on that person, take them to, an insane asylum, whatever it is there, state hospital, whatever it is, just regular hospital even for that matter, and just put them up to a psych ward is what it is there. And for, 3 days is what it is to monitor them and, ask them a bunch of questions, do a psych eval on them based on what it is there. And, if they don't think you're insane after that, then they'll be like, okay, you're released after this 3 days. If they still think you're insane after that 3 days, they're going to keep you locked up so it is then. And again, I think that alone, if we just use the Baker Act more honestly, you would have a lot more primitive people, if that be the case, that are clearly like psychotically insane leftists at this point, because it's not even just the trans people in a lot of cases that are on the left there that are, a bunch of lunatics and stuff like that. It's just your baseline leftist, dude. Like, I've seen so many videos in the past month or so of just like, and it goes back to kind of that septum piercing theory is what it is, where you got the boring in the nose there is what it is. And it's these chicks that are just completely psychotic is what it is, dude. And in a lot of cases, those are the ones who are then, either encouraging or they are basically backing these people that are trans, that can be transgender and stuff like that, to do these massacres is what it is. And I've seen a lot of the videos this past week after this massacre happened there in Minnesota of exactly that, where you had all these fucked up females like that on the left that are like, oh, the shooter totally should have done more, whatever the case be, and fuck them Christian kids and everything else like that. And that's another thing that we need to talk about as well, dude, because it's like, this was a hate crime against Christian children, man. Like, nobody's really seems to be talking about that at all. Is you have 2 kids that were 8 and 10 years old that are dead now because of this piece of shit. And you had I think it was 16 or 17 wounded because of that piece of crap too as well. So you essentially have 3 adults in their 80s who I'm assuming were probably the priest. And then my guess would be the teachers of that Catholic school is what it is there that church was attached to there is what it is. And they were all wounded. Now you got these kids that were, I think it was 6 to 15 years old, a dozen or so of them there, that are probably going to have PTSD issues for the rest of their lives, honestly. And it's nobody seems to want to care about these people is what it is, dude. And that's what pisses me off the most, honestly. And that's why every year that I get a chance to do it, when I remember exactly what day it is, obviously, I will tend to do an anniversary of what happened here in Dayton in 2019, where you had another psychotic leftist lunatic, Antifa wannabe motherfucker, going on a killing spree and ended up killing his own sister, who was pretending to be a trans man at the time. There's what it is. Which, that kind of correlates into what we're going to talk about next year, which is this interesting thing I found last night in my X feed by the Gays Against Groomers people is what it is, which was, despite making up less than 1% of the population, trans individuals account for roughly 40% of successful and would-be shooters since 2020, new data shows. The alarming overrepresentation demands we address harmful ideologies pushing youth towards confusion and violence. And yeah, it was a Wall Street Journal deep dive. Since 2020, roughly 40% of successful and would-be school shooters were trans or trans suspected, data shows. The problem is this is also a paywall article too, for that matter, so I can actually read the entire article. I can read about maybe the first 2 paragraphs, and then it'll just be able to stop because I'm not paying money for these things. What it is, just so stupid that you put something like that behind a fucking paywall, because it's dude, if you're going to do an article like that, make it so the public can actually read it and understand what's going on there. So it is. So. Yeah, and that's the thing. If you look back at my history, after I bought my first gun here in Ohio, which was literally days before the 2018 midterms, so it was just over 7 years ago now is what it is, or around 7 years ago now, I was actually pro-waiting period for about 5 minutes there, and I have no problem saying that, because after the fact I realized how stupid waiting periods actually are and how it does get people killed and stuff like that, especially when you have data proving this point already is what it is. There was a really good story out of New Jersey of this woman who was, I forget what her name was offhand, but it's probably the most famous story out of this whole thing. So if you want to look it up yourself, you can find her name. There's what it is. But basically, she was being stalked by her ex-boyfriend or ex-husband, whatever it was. I'm not sure. It was some ex in the picture. That's what it is. And she went to a gun shop there in New Jersey to buy a gun. And just like that, they were like, oh, it's a 3-day or a 7-day waiting period, whatever it is there. I'm not sure what the time was. And she was like, okay, well, I'm still going to buy this though. And they're like, yeah, but you still got to wait like 7 days to get the guns, what it is there. And she's like, do you guys don't understand? Like, I'm being stalked by this dude is what it is right now. And they're like, yeah, it's not on us. It's the, state passing these stupid ass gun laws what it is there. And so she's like, fine, I'm still going to buy this what it is there. And then I think it was like a day or two later, she was, I believe it was at an apartment complex she lived at, and was either going to her car or coming home from like getting groceries or something like that. And yeah, her psycho ex showed up and just stabbed her to death with a big ass knife is what it is. So, if people want to do harm to you, they'll do harm to you. And like, that's the problem with our government is that, government is complacent in a lot of these things, because when you do tyrannical overreach like that and you're restricting people's rights to be able to buy what they want to buy when they want to buy it, you are essentially making it harder for people to be protected in case of something like that, or just in case of tyrannical overreach is what it is there, which kind of brings us full circle back to what the whole point is here, which is that, do I support this? Don't I support this? And I'm still kind of torn on this. Because I don't fully support like banning this group or that group is what it is, because again, like I've said, as other people brought up, how close are we to a Jim Crow ban then again? And for those who don't know, obviously back in the day during the quote unquote Jim Crow era of this country, you literally had black Americans not be able to buy guns just because they were black is what it is. And, it's like, like, well, what's going to be next? Like dudes wearing Hornaday hats. So they can be able to buy guns. I was making jokes. I'm wearing the old Hornaday hat, which I do appreciate from our boy Crappy out there. But yeah, it's ridiculous, dude, is what it is. And like I said, if it's one thing where it would be, like I said, about 15 minutes ago, whatever it was now, if it's something where it would be like what Legally Armed America said in his premiere last night, if it was something like HHS declaring gender dysphoria as like a mental illness or something like that, and like obviously that would be probative person status at that point for these people, then is what it is. Like that would be a different thing altogether is what it is there, where it would be, yeah, you're, banning somebody because they're like criminally insane essentially is what it is there, versus just outright banning people just because they claim to be trans or something like that is absolutely ridiculous as it is, and is complete and total infringement upon the Second Amendment and exactly what our founding fathers fought against is what it is there. So now granted, that being said, I mean, if we brought those guys back to life now, like shit, they might be for it, honestly, at this point, for all we know, dude. Because I guarantee, like, in their time period, they never thought the shit was going to happen, And that was actually something we talked about on Honda's chat the other day, was about how a lot of people don't realize that the majority of the books that were burned during Nazi Germany were actually about transgenderism. And it's why it goes to this kind of like 80-year cycle, essentially, is what it is here. Like about 80 to 100 years, I think is what it is, give or take. And that's what we're in again right now, is what it is. We're in that, fourth turning cycle is what it is there, where it's like, yeah, it's gone all the way back to the trans stuff again, dude. And I feel like, unfortunately, because you had Hitler and the SS and stuff like that burning all these books and this material there in Nazi Germany, it's basically stopped us from being able to see that as a historical fact, then is what it is, and have the historical documentation of some of these books is what it is that were burned. And so that way we could have stopped this shit in its tracks like 20, 30 years ago before it even started, basically. Because the thing is, when you start looking into a lot of this stuff, it really didn't start until about, I would say, 2004 or 5, something like that. At least in modern day society, anyway. Like, it was around that time was when we started getting the whole, slippery slope thing. And actually, it might have actually been later than that, even. Like, I think the earliest ones were around like the 2000s or so, like I said, like 2003 to 5, someplace in there. But I think like the more known ones now are more like 2010-ish or so, give or take. And it was people like your Jazz Jennings types and stuff like that is what it is there. And, obviously there's been these studies now that have proven that when you actually look at this stuff and you see how many of these kids have basically been gender confused into, thinking they're the opposite sex is what it is there, and identifying as transgender and stuff like that, when you look at a long enough study and a long enough time span, there is what it is. By the time most of these kids are like 22, 23 years old, they will grow out of that stuff, and they'll either be straight up straight is what it is there, or they'll just be some gay person is what it is there. And either way, they're not transgender is what it is. And it's just these sick-ass adults that are most likely either pedophiles or pedophile enablers in a lot of cases, who are trying to legitimately confuse these children into thinking they're something they're not, because they just want to fuck with these kids' heads, or they want to molest them is what it is in most cases in that situation. So, and that's another problem right now that we need to be talking about with public education in this country, because when you start looking into these teachers unions in the public education system and stuff like that, they're the ones that are pushing the majority of this shit, honestly, dude. I was watching this video earlier today, actually, where it was some woman in Texas who was discussing her, I think, grandfather. It was at like some, I don't know if it was supposed to be like a committee hearing in Texas there for like some bill that they were passing or what it was. Basically, this woman was talking in front of the thing or whatever, and she was discussing how her grandpa was like an assistant attorney general or something like that, and had done a bunch of cases in front of the Supreme Court and stuff like that, and then was talking about like gay clubs or something like that in colleges. And the guy who was like the main person of this hearing was like talking about his father then and being like, well, you know, my dad drove the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile for like 20 years is what it is, but that, what does that have to do with anything is what it is there. And no, I think it was his grandfather, that's what he's saying. But either way, it's like some, basically like, yeah, it's whatever at that point. And she was trying to correlate, like, oh, it has to do with the legislation they were passing. And the guy's like, no, it doesn't, because what they were passing at the time was to stop kids that were in the 4th grade to 8th grade, essentially. And I think it was maybe even like kindergarten to 8th grade is basically what it was there, from being gender confused in these after school clubs for like gay kids / trans kids is what it is there. And in a lot of cases, it was these so-called teachers that are nothing more than indoctrinators at that point, who were basically secretly having these kids join these clubs and not telling their parents what was going on. And it was these, you know, sick-ass adults in the education system that were pushing this shit on these kids, and it was to groom them is what it was, basically. So, yeah, it's just a really bunch of sick shit, honestly, dude. So, anyway. But, yeah, going down to the comment section now for that gays against groomers things there. You had this person talking about it here. Said there is a pattern here, and you got the Uvalde shooter was unconfirmed as being trans. The Georgia shooter is also unconfirmed. The Denver kids actually were like trans / gay is what it is there. You had this person that was an Idaho shooter being gender fluid. You had the other Denver shooter being trans. You had the Aberdeen one being trans. The Philadelphia one being trans. The Colorado Springs, this was the nightclub that this guy went into, if I'm not mistaken. He was non-binary. And then, of course, you have the most famous one of all of them, which is that piece of shit Nashville shooter who was obviously supposed to be a trans man, is what it is there. And, yeah, that one, that like I think all these could have been stopped, honestly, but specifically that Nashville shooter could have been easily stopped, is what it is there. And it's just sad that none of them were. I also do believe, truthfully, that Uvalde was a government psyop for that matter, because when you look into that one, it was back in because it happened in 2022 is what it was there, and that's what directly led to Biden and company illegally passing the Safer Communities Act things that it is there. But the thing of that was, it was in 2018. You had 2 kids that were arrested in some school. I think it was there in Texas, but I'm not sure. And it was basically a 13 to 14-year-old that were busted because they were planning to do a quote-unquote Columbine-style attack in 2022 is what they said. And when you line up the time period there, the shooter themselves at that point was 18 at the time of that shooting then. So it's very possible that our government literally just MK Ultra'd that motherfucker for 4 years, so that it is, with like FBI handlers and stuff like that, and made sure that happened. Because again, I don't think, given what that kid did for a living, which I think was like Wendy's worker or something like that for like 6 months or something, I just don't see you having that much money to buy the shit that he bought, basically, without like government basically handing you some cash at that point, honestly. So, not to mention the fact you had a bunch of pussy ass cops sitting in the fucking hallway for like, what was it, 45 minutes or something, Well, kids were literally being slaughtered when they could have walked in there and just domed that motherfucker immediately within the first 10 seconds and been done with it then. And like I said, that specifically then, led to a bunch of anti-gun bullshit that a bunch of rhino cuck fuckers that were up for re-election that year that ended up retiring out of office as it was then. Voted yes on, one of them being that piece of shit Rob Portman here in Ohio. And then, of course, that's when he dipped out after that. And then that's when Vance became a U.S. Senator at that time during that race. So, anyway, it's a bunch of shit all the way around, dude. So, anyways, but, yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of fucking fuckery with that stuff and a bunch of these other ones, too, for that matter. But like I said, when you start looking into the psych drug stuff, they were all in the psych drugs that was there. So, and I know there was that one too. Going back to the 40% one, it was. Let me see if I can find it here. Yeah, it was the headline for the article there, where it was the nutter in the glasses right there. That dude, I forget which one that was offhand, but it was they had their guns inside of the bathroom, like the boys' room or whatever it was there. And then I think they ended up I want to say they killed one person in that one. They maybe shot like 2 or 3. And then they got shot and killed by a school resource officer or stopped by a school resource officer. I forget if they were killed or not. I can't remember offhand. Because that one was in like the last year or two is what it is there. And yeah, like that was one of the ones that basically it made the news for about a day or two. And then as soon as it was basically, it wasn't quite, what they wanted for massacres, what it is there to push their gun control narrative is what it is. It's like, okay. Oh, the trans, yep, kick them out. Basically, is what it is there. So, yeah, it's a sad situation all the way around. And unfortunately, I think it's not only a trans issue right now / mental illness issue right now, specifically is what it is there with the drugs, the psych drugs, SSRIs, etc. there. It's also the fact that you have all these places being gun-free zones for decades now. And that is the problem. Because even looking at Minnesota there, that church in Minnesota, they specifically went to the governor's office there for Tim Walz and were like, hey, dude, we need this much money for a school resource officer so we can have some security on this campus, basically. And they're just like, no. Meanwhile, at the same time, you had the state of Minnesota have a $17 billion surplus of money at that time that within a couple of days of that suddenly just like poof, up in smoke. And nobody knows where that money went for that matter. And then that was also when you had Walls, et cetera, doing some other shit there, what it is. So it's like, yeah, how much embezzlement's going on in Minnesota, dude, for real? Like, I guarantee there's a fuck ton of Democrat fucking RICO Act shit they're going on right now, too, for that matter. And the same thing across the board, just like Michigan the other day. You had, was it like 400 and, I forget if it was like 443,000 or maybe it was like 443 jobs, something like, I feel like there's a couple, no, sorry. It was 4,300, that's what it was. Yeah, it was 4,000. I think it was like 4,297 or something like that. So it was almost 4,300 basically. And it was them creating over 4,000 fake jobs there is what it is. So they can embezzle a fuck ton of money. The Democrat Party was. So yeah, just not cool at all, bro, at all, for that matter. But anyway. So there's a video going further down to that Gays Against Groomers post there from yesterday. It says trans rights activists are protesting outside the Minnesota church where the trans shooter took the lives of 2 children and injured many more. True evil and wickedness. Yes, these people are, dude. They are fucked in the head for sure, 100%. And like, honestly, I was going to get smacked across the face a couple times and then stripped of voting rights for life is what it is there, dude. Like, truthfully speaking. Like, I've said it for a while. I'll say it again right now. Like, the 19th and 26th Amendment should both be a case-by-case basis. And specifically, you should have to pass a constitutional rights test to even have them run for office for that matter in this country. And I guarantee you, if you had that be the baseline for you running for office in this country of passing a constitutional test and stuff like that, there would be so many fucking people that would just be disqualified at that point from running for office. Like, you probably don't have a Democrat Party anymore because they're too fucking dumb to even pass this kind of tests. But you definitely have a bunch of constitutionalist power. That's what it would be. And we have a much better country overall, so it is then. So, but yeah, it's just a bunch of shit all the way around, dude. And I really think, truthfully, we're heading towards a precipice in history right now where you're gonna see something happen. Second Civil War, some kind of big fallout, basically, of the 2020s, or what it is. Maybe leading up to 2030 for that matter, who knows? But yeah, I definitely see in the next like 5 years like something popping off, because I think we're already at the point right now where we're just like bursting at the seams, and it's just starting to break out basically at this point. Honestly, like people are just finally having it. Is what it is there. So, but anyway, going to the after 40 minutes and now going to the actual article for the day that we were discussing. This whole thing came from. Yeah, it was just Department considering ban on transgender people owning firearms. So, first of all, do we really want red flag loving Pam Bondi to have any control of anybody's rights to keep firearms in this country? I say fuck no. I don't know what y'all think on that one. So, anyway, then it said senior officials at the U.S. Department of Justice have held multiple meetings in recent days to consider a possible federal ban on transgender individuals from owning firearms. But News have learned, says multiple sources familiar with the matter, including one official inside the DOJ, confirmed to Breitbart News that the Office of Legal Counsel, or the OLC, which advises the Attorney General on legal matters, held several such meetings since the tragic shooting carried out by the trans individual in Minnesota, killing 2 children and injuring, it was 21 more, that's what it was. So yeah, that's what it was. It was 3 people in their 80s, and it was 18 kids, is what it is, between the ages of 6 and 15 years old is what it was there. So it would have been probably like, I'm guessing like 2 classes or something, where it would have been maybe like first grade and then probably like 8th grade maybe went together or something for that specific time period to go do their like prayer class or whatever for the day. I forget what that's actually called, but basically, because I knew when I was in school, specifically elementary school there, because I went to Catholic elementary school too, was what it was. It was once every, I think, week or so. Maybe it was twice a week, actually. There was a church attached to that school, and we would literally walk like 10, 15 feet up to that church is what it is there. And it would be at some point during the day, every class would basically go over there to have some kind of a mass is what it is. So it might have just been like a 1st/8th grade mass or something like that. That would make sense why it would be different ages of kids. There's what it is. Or it could, or even now I think about it more, it could be too the fact that you had maybe it was the 15-year-olds, maybe like an altar boy or something like that for that matter. And it would have been, then the youngest kids would have been just like the 1st grade or something like that, or 2nd grade even for that matter. So who knows? But anyway. Let's see, continuing on though, it said legal question of banning firearms ownership for transgender individuals would focus on whether these people suffer from gender dysphoria, which again, like I said, going back to that Leave the Armed America guy's video last night, what his thought was having HHS, RFK Jr., et cetera there, figuring the stuff out and doing what they need to do. Basically, if they want to declare gender dysphoria as a mental illness or whatever the case be, that would be a different story. That would be for people at that point is what it would be then. So, yeah, so gender dysphoria is in fact mentally ill and therefore should be denied firearms ownership while they are unstable and unwell. Okay, so see, that's another problem right there too, because it specifically says while they are unstable and unwell. So what that says to me is it's like, okay, so if they're on like meds and they're good to go, or they own the firearms again, that's what it is, or is this going to be some red flag kind of bullshit where it's like, oh, it's a temporary ban, but in reality, it's them just stealing your rights for years is what it is there. Because that's the thing, right? Like, you look at Pam Bondi when she was AG of Florida back in 2018, and she is the only reason that Florida has red flag laws on the books now in 2025, 7 years later. And there are people that since like 2019, for the past 6 years now, that have gotten unconstitutionally red flagged and still do not have their gun rights back 6 years later now is what it is. So yeah, again, this could be a very simple slippery slope to bad shit is what it is, and that is why I am completely against doing that specifically, and why if you're going to do it, you do it a different way. If you need to prohibit people from doing stuff, then you make prohibit people is what it is, dude. But there's a difference between making somebody a prohibited person on an individual case-by-case basis is what it is there, and just blanket statement being like, oh, well, it's all these trans people. Oh, that person over there is trans now or whatever. And then they just ban them from owning guns for that matter. So, not cool, man, at all. Anyway. Continuing on here, it said, it would be a major escalation to see if the federal government curtails Second Amendment protections for a big group of people. But in the case of transgender people, it is a place that many believe makes sense, which is why some top conservatives, or cuck-servatives as it is, such as Turning Point USA's Charlie Kirk have said the government should do this, with Charlie Kirk about a week ago saying, if you are crazy enough to want to hormonally and surgically change your sex, you have a mental disorder and you are too crazy to own a firearm. Okay, and how long before dudes in red ties are not able to own firearms there, Mr. Kirk? Again, slippery slope, buddy. So, anyway. So Democrats have called for common sense gun laws for a long time. This seems pretty common sense, and a source inside the DOJ told Breitbart News. And that's the problem right there, dude. Them we've been saying Democrats and common sense gun laws, which really is code word for unconstitutional gun grab / gun control. So, yeah, totally not cool, man. Anyways, while any decision has not yet been final, the fact that these meetings are happening seems to suggest that there might be movement inside the DOJ under Pam Bondi towards taking some kind of step here. Says Vice President J.D. Vance visited Minneapolis to meet with the families of the children the trans shooter had murdered last week, and with the recovering victims who lived through it. Said Vance's opponent in last year's election, Tim Walz, who is Minnesota governor, has made Minnesota a trans refuge. Said Walz has, in the aftermath of the shooting, called for more gun control generally, and Vance said in response to the people that people want the shootings to keep happening. What was the aftermath called? Since the shooting, called for more gun control generally, and Vance said in response that people want to stop the shootings that keep happening. Yes, okay. I read that wrong, is what it is. It said, quote, I'm not going to tell Minnesota lawmakers or the governor exactly how they should respond to this tragedy. I think there is a strong desire from across the political spectrum to do something so that these shootings are less common, Vance said. So see, that's the problem though, right? Because people at that school wanted to do something, but piece of shit Tim Walz denied them the fucking finances to have school resource officers on the spot to stop this stuff, dude. So hence, this is exactly why Tim Walz, exactly why Minnesota AG Keith Ellison, exactly why Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan, the crazy bitch with the fucking trans kids, the protect trans kids shirt with a big-ass knife on it. That's exactly why these fuckers need to be in jail right now, dude. They need to be brought up as accessories to these fucking crimes that it is, man. Because I guarantee the first time that you have a politician actually being held to account at this point, shit's going to change real fucking quick. When you start charging these motherfucking Democrats for the tragedy that they're helping create is what it is there, it's going to stop real quick, dude. Because you're either A, not going to have Democrats in power anymore after that, or B, you're actually have people charging them with the crimes they're committing right now. And whether it be life imprisonment, death penalty, etc. there, problem solves itself at that point, honestly, in many cases. But yeah, really, truthfully, like Walz should be brought up on a bunch of different fucking felonies right now, dude, from turning Minnesota into that trans refuge to, pushing for gun control before this, did nothing to stop it, obviously. And now pushing more gun control. And then on top of that, you got that fucking piece of shit, Jacob Fry, who's the current Minneapolis mayor, who keeps being all like, oh, we need to ban assault weapons now. And it's like, where you can get fucked, Jacob Fry, when you were literally cucking for Somalia in the last 2 weeks, you fucking cunt. You Islamic terrorist fucking hotbed breeder is what it is, you piece of shit. I seriously fucking hate these Democrats, dude, so much. Anyway. But yeah, it's just absolutely fucking ridiculous what it is, dude. And like I said, I think we're heading towards a bad deal right now, and I think this is definitely going to be really just not good in general. And like I said, like other people have said, like, could this whole thing in fact just be a troll to get left to support, insane people with guns is what it is basically. And I mean, it's very possible, honestly. Like, would I put that 3D, 4D, 5D chess past anyone at this point? No. However, that being said, do I think people are really that smart to do that stuff? Or is it just, you have pieces of shit that are obvious gun grabbers in positions of power right now, like the Attorney General's office at the federal level, that just hate people's rights is what it is, and we want to see them deny their rights is what it is there. And I think that's a lot more likely is what it is then. So, I don't know. It's hard to say, man. But the whole point of the thing is that something definitely needs to be done. And like I said, I think truthfully, if we wanted to do something as a society right now, it would be that we go out in the streets right now and we start calling up our lawmakers. We start holding rallies outside of state houses and stuff like that. And even potentially, there in DC for that matter, holding like some million-man march there maybe or something like that, and demanding that Big Pharma be held to account at this point for SSRI drugs as it is right now. Because, like I said, when you have all these drugs being linked back to all these shootings, there is one guaranteed factor there, and it's that there's obviously psych drugs that are the problem in the situation all the time. That's what it is there in every single one of these massacres. So the fact that we're not holding Big Pharma's feet to fire at this point, really it shows two things to me, which is the first being that you have so many politicians that are in debt to these people, whether it be bribed, whether it be, campaign donated to, whatever it is, doesn't matter, honestly. And then secondly, it shows that because of that, the ones that aren't indebted to these people just don't give a fuck enough to actually, speak out about it and be like, hey, this is the problem right now. Let's fix it. So, yeah, like it's basically like the go along to get along crap, and it's really fucking getting frustratingly out of hand is what it is right now, dude. Like it is getting to the fatigue point right now is what it is, really, honestly. So, and speaking of fatigue point, this is where we're going to actually leave off today with, which is that idiot Brandon Johnson, Chicago's current mayor, was proven totally wrong about the whole gun thing from other states. ATF data. Guns recovered in Illinois are largely from Illinois. I believe that is a Taurus G2C right here in the middle that guy has his hand on. And the reason I say that is because if you look at the way that the trigger is in that, it has that kind of blade is what it is there, which that's what the G2C has what it is. Or it could be even a Millennium. What do you call it now? Yeah, it would be a Millennium PT-111 or something like that. I think is what their precursor to the G2C, G3C is what it was called. Which it was way worse of a gun back then because obviously it had there was like a weird like key turn there is what it is. And it would actually engage sometimes when people were shooting, and it would actually lock down the gun then. Which that's what they got rid of that crap with the G2C is what it is, and that's why the Taurus G2C became popular. That was my first handgun opposite that I bought back in 2018. And then it was also my carry gun for about 6 years. Well, no, not quite that long. I'm trying to remember now. Yeah, no, I guess it'd be about 6 years or so, give or take. Off and on. Because it was last year was when I switched over to the G3C is what it is then. So. Or no, yeah, it was about a year and a half ago, I guess, until I switched over. Yeah, because it would have been like February, March of last year is when I switched over to G3C is what it was. I think, when I got it. So yeah, it's not quite a year and a half yet, but yeah, up to that point I was carrying the GTC as my primary as what it was then. It's a good gun though, for sure. But anyway. It says ATF gun recovery and trace data from 2023 for Illinois shows that Illinois is the state of origin from which the majority of guns are recovered and traced. So this runs counter to the left's frequent claim that Chicago has a gun problem because of other states. Because other states do not have gun controls as stringent as Illinois does. So according to ATF data, 22,973 firearms were recovered or traced to Illinois in 2023. Though of those, 9,147 were from the state of Illinois, and in a distant second, 2,796 were from Indiana. That's hilarious. Behind Indiana, there were not even 1,000 guns recovered or traced with origins in any other single state. So there were 952 recovered or traced from Missouri, 663 from Wisconsin, 390 from Tennessee, etc. So Second Amendment Foundation's Codis Morris commented on the ATF data via X, writing in part, also note that the gun being from another state does not necessarily mean anything. Someone may have moved to Illinois, then had the gun stolen there, where it was used in a crime. The average time to crime of an Illinois traced gun is over 6 years. Jesus Christ, dude. So the idea that the guns is being brought up in southern states, then shipped to Chicago to be issued for service in gang warfare is ridiculous. Yes, it is. And then there's the list of everybody's different amounts there. So yeah, under Wisconsin at 663, got Mississippi at 419, Kentucky at 405, Tennessee at 390, Georgia at 367, Texas at 315, Iowa at 303, Ohio at 248, Alabama at 198, Arizona at 187, Florida at 173, and Michigan at 159. I mean, this is like the one time I don't know how to beat Michigan in something, because obviously we had more guns from our state that were traced there to Chicago than Michigan did. But yeah, it is what it is, man. So, but yeah, this is the idiocy that idiot Johnson said the other day, which was Chicago will continue to have a violence problem as long as red states continue to have a gun problem. The endless flow of illegal guns into Chicago can be traced to red states like Mississippi, Indiana, and Louisiana. It's up to the federal government to step in and stop this. What a fucking moron, dude, for real. And like I said, when you have all the data proving otherwise is what it is. Like, Johnson's just a fucking moron is what it is there, dude. So that is crazy to think about, though, that it's from the time that the gun is actually stolen to the time that it's used in that crime is 6 years or more. I guess it actually tracks, though, because if you think about it from that aspect of things, like, you wouldn't really want to use it immediately is what it is there, because it's still considered a hot gun, basically. Versus, and it could also be, too, the fact that you have, depending on the person that stole it, too, for that matter, they might just, pawn it off on somebody else then immediately, and then it might be in 3 or 4 people's hands, and at that point over the next, 4 or 5 years is what it is, before it only gets to the actual criminal's hand that then uses it in a crime and, 6 months after they get it, basically, or something. So it's kind of like that one here where you had, it was the murder of Ace Lucas in downtown Canton there, back in 2020, and it was was it 2020 or 2019 that he was killed in? I feel like it was July of 2020 when that happened, I think. Because a bunch of us were we were going to organize an actual like Pro 2A walk is what it is then, and then people were like, yeah, that might not be a good idea just because, it might be like a slap in the face to the family at that point then or whatever. And that's why we kind of just decided against doing that, is what it was then. So, which, looking back, like, we probably still should have done something, maybe just not, like an armed walk or something at the time. Like, it should have just been like a solidarity walk with that family or something, if that be the case then. Of, hey, we're here to support you guys, whatever you need, basically. And I think it could have been a good way to branch out at that point. Unfortunately, it didn't really go anywhere just because of lockdowns and everything like that then. And of course, all the riots and stuff too. So, but yeah, Ace's murder was There was at least 3 black males that were involved in it, 2 of which were probably from Chicago. There's what it is that came to Ohio then to kill this kid. His father is what it was then. Because what actually happened was, it was Ace's father, Aaron Lucas, had apparently ripped off some gang of a bunch of drugs and cash. And then these 3 idiots basically came back around to his house and started shooting up the house, not knowing that there was kids inside. They knew there was kids inside and didn't care what it was, because they were literally tripping over kids' toys outside in the back porch and stuff like that, in the backyard too, for that matter, before they started with fire in the house there. So they knew there was kids inside the house basically and didn't give a fuck about it. And yeah, ended up shooting into the house. Ace and his brother Arcel were laying on, I believe they were laid out on a couch somehow to sleep because there wasn't any extra beds for them there at the house or whatever. And the ironic thing is, had Aaron not gone to his ex and been like, hey, I want the twins tonight for, just hang out with them, whatever the case be, Ace would probably still be alive right now is what it is, just because he would have never been in the house that night then. So, yeah, basically you had a gun, you had at least one of the bullets from one of the guns. It had gone through, I believe it was Arcel's ankle or like calf muscle or something like that. And then it basically shot Ace like directly in the back of the spinal cord and neck area and instantly killed him as it was then. So, and the reason I bring it up obviously is because the gun that they traced back to the guy they eventually caught in that situation was used in a previous murder at that point then. So this guy bought a basically hot, crime gun off the streets as what it was there to then use in this crime and end up getting charged with double murder. Here's what it was then. And as far as I'm aware, thankfully he's still in our jail system right now, but again, in reality, he should be at a fucking firing squad right now. That's what it is for what he did to that kid. And the same thing goes with the murder of Vernon Sweeney too, for that matter. Like, all those people should be fucking death penalty like that too, for that matter. And I guarantee exactly what I said earlier, like, if we actually had consequences for these fucking criminals then, for what they were doing, like, you'd have people, it would be similar to what we saw the other day with Trump blowing up that boat there that was Venezuelan drug smugglers, where it shows a fucking message to the rest of the world at that point, dude. Be like, yeah, we're not fucking around anymore, people. And really, in that case, it would also show a message to the rest of the criminals out there. Hey, you want to fuck around and kill kids, you want to fuck around, do this, that, etc., dude. Like, guess what? Your ass is going to be the next one on a fucking firing squad, bitch. So it really is time to, like, bring down that fucking hammer fist in some ways is what it is there. But unfortunately, there's people that just don't want to do that is what it is there because, again, we've become so pussified society is what it is in many cases. And then, ironically enough, it goes back to all the cycles and the water supplies, what it is there because, when you get all these major cities that have refilled water in them and stuff like that tastes like garbage because you have all these different women and men, etc., that are on these psych drugs and stuff like that. And it's just going through their system straight into the urine. The urine's being sent off to the fucking local water treatment plant to be turned back into water, not be filtered out those drugs in is what it is there. And then, of course, what do you have? You have that going back in the general population. You have people going nuts because that shit is what it is then. There was a study done, I think it was back around 2010, give or take, and it was the Puget Sound, was what it was there. There's people that were catching fish, like specifically like salmon runs is what it is or whatever there. And they had a bunch of scientists then that were having these fishermen like hand them their catches, basically is what it is there, and like paying them to do that. That's what it was. Like go out there and fish for the day or something. And as soon as they gave them the fish, then they were dissecting these fish like in this little makeshift lab place that was right around the area there or whatever. And they were tracing like all the different elements that were in these fish's system and stuff like that, and their flesh, I guess is what you say at that point, like the fillets or whatever there. And yeah, they ended up finding, I think it was like 750 or like 970, something crazy high like that, different kinds of drugs in the system of these fish. And it was anything from like black tar heroin to Big Pharma SSRIs of every way, shape, and form, basically, it is there. And so, yeah, if you're consuming that, dude, like, you're obviously getting, like, these drug highs and stuff like that. You're getting, like, those drug makeups in your DNA is what it is then. So it's, like, it makes a lot more sense when people seem so psychotic in these systems, or in these different major cities in this country is what it is then. Because you're constantly drinking that stuff in your water supply is what it is, dude. And there's no really way to filter it out because you know, if you don't know what to filter out for, like, it's kind of hard to get a filter that would even deal with what it is then. And we don't have the actual government doing their fucking job and like cleaning the water properly is what it is there. It's like, hey, you're just going to drink in that crap. That's what it is. It's just nothing different than all the different rural areas around here. There are, you know, get the runoff from the agriculture industry and stuff like that from Monsanto and shit. And their chemical spray and stuff like that goes into the water of all the wells and stuff. Because in the town I used to live in as a kid, there was a study done there. Some of the people had paid Erin Brockovich to come in and do different studies what it is there. And she ended up testing 8 different watersheds in my hometown, so it is there. And it was 6 watersheds and 2 people's, like I think it was individual wells from either side of the town is what it is or something there. And every single one of those 8 tests came back positive for chromium-6, which for those who know what chromium-6 is, if you breathe in chromium-6, it gives you lung cancer. So obviously if you're drinking that in a glass of water, what other kinds of cancers is it going to give you around your body? That is what it is. So yeah, it's definite, and it makes a lot more sense looking at the quote-unquote environmental factors and stuff like that of why these young girls are, you know, getting their periods at, you know, 7, 8, 9 years old nowadays is what it is there. And by the time they're like 11, they're like about 15, 16 is what it is there. And then, you know, going on that aspect of things, when you have all these dudes that are taking all this estrogen and stuff like that, of course you're feminizing young boys is what it is, dude, because you're having them, you know, drink all that fucking extra estrogen and stuff like that from birth control pills, etc. there. That's still in the water supply. But also in the same aspect of things, when you have these kids that are eating this food from all these giant corporations and stuff like that, they're all made up of like soy shit is what it is in there. When you look into actually what is, who should be eating soy and who shouldn't be eating soy, you literally, like, all these young guys should never be eating soy at all, dude. Or actually really any male for that matter should never be eating soy for that matter, because it is an estrogen mimicker and it literally makes you more feminized. It takes down your testosterone level like crazy is what it is there. You wonder why people have testosterone problems now is what it is. You wonder why you have all these American males now having like super low sperm counts and stuff like that. We're not able to have birth rates come back up to where we're replacing each other and stuff like that. We're even surpassing our replacement numbers as it is there. And it's like, that's exactly why is what it is, because you have all this shit that we're just being poisoned to death by our fucking government and the foods in the food industry, basically, that's able to get away with this shit, honestly. And that's exactly why people are trying to, going back full circle, they're trying to basically silence RFK right now as HHS Cemetery, because this man is speaking out about this for the first time ever in a lot of cases for people to hear. And people are like, oh, we can't have that now. Like there was specifically there was a video that came out yesterday, and it was, I believe, some cemetery, or no, sorry, not cemetery, some Senate hearing where it was RFK discussing, I forget if it was like food dyes out of our food supply or what exactly it was for. It was that's what it was. It was the stuff with the CDC recently with all the firings. There's what it was. And he was explaining like why people got fired basically, and like vaccine damage and everything else. Like that's what it was. And it's like, yeah, dude, like this is shit that people need to wake the fuck up to. And it seems like people are finally waking up to it in some cases. Well, not everybody, obviously, but like there's a lot that actually are is what it is, because they finally have understood that, yes, we are being poisoned from every which way is what it is. And it's because you have corporate greed in most cases, what it is there. It's because you have crony capitalism is what it is in many cases, where you have these giant corporations be able to become mega conglomerates and monopolize everything without being trust busted in the fucking ground at that point. That's what it is. And that's my biggest problem with everything right now is what it is, because you have all these corporations like that are able to, you know, mesh up and mesh up and mesh up. And then you basically have just the one as a monopoly is what it is then. Instead of that one being trust busted down to about 20, many decades back is what it is there. So, and then of course the two big to fail / jail banks out there is another big problem too for that matter. So, yeah, it's just a bunch of, it's like everything is just worse and worse, it seems like, and it's because we keep allowing people to be in power for decades of their lives as it is, dude. Like there was one the other day, it was I believe it was a DC delegate named Eleanor Norton, I want to say her name was, but I could be wrong about the last name. But either way, this woman is like 80-something years old right now. I think she's like 86, 88, something like that's what it is there. She was at a podium bitching about something the other day there in DC. Literally had to have two people grab her by the arms to help her walk off so she didn't fall over and hurt herself. And this old decrepit cunt is still trying to run for re-election next year is what it is, dude. And this is what I've said for so long. We need to have not only term limits on every position of power in this country, we need to have age limits and health limits too, for that matter, dude. Because even here at the state level in Ohio, and I know this is also same for a lot of other states there too, for that matter, you have specifically for judges and stuff like that, I want to say it's like 70 is the cutoff there. And like once they hit that age, I think they're allowed to serve out the rest of their term is what it is, but they can never run for re-election after that is what it is. And that's how it should be for across the board right now, dude. It should be like, yeah, 70 years old, you're done. Basically at that point. You can serve out the rest of the term, get the fuck out is what it is after that though. Because there is absolutely no reason for our society that is not made up of some silent generation people, baby boomers, Gen X, Zennials, Millennials, Gen Z, and now Gen Alpha, who's almost voting rights at this point. So we have 7 different generations, and we literally have 2 of them being baby boomers and the silent generation people that have basically been controlling Congress for like since the 70s, essentially. And it's like, why? Like, why are we letting this continue on, basically, at this point, dude? It's absolutely insane to have 75, 85, 95-year-old people, or older for that matter, in some cases. I think Chuck Grassley now, like 98 or something crazy like that. Like, yeah, why the fuck do we have these people still in power right now, dude? Like, kick them the fuck out due to age, and we replace them with better people at that point is what it is then. Or if nothing else, we actually just restructure our entire system when it comes to congressional seats and stuff like that, and everybody gets 5 across the board in every single state, and everybody else has, dozens at this point, told to fuck off at that point, honestly. That way you don't have shit being controlled by California and New York with like 80 together is what it is there, and make it up like 1/5 of Congress basically is what it is there. So, but yeah, there could be so much good changes happening right now in this country, but it's going to take an effort from everybody. I think at this point, I think there's so many people out there that are just willfully ignorant to it, and then you combine the people that are actually, sort of have the knowledge right now, but they also have to work is what it is there. So you have them, choosing work over choosing, their kid's future in a lot of cases there. You have the ones that don't even have kids that don't care because they're the last of their bloodline basically what it is there. And, keep going basically. And it's like, yeah, it's everybody kind of wanting to be out for themselves at this point, unfortunately, in many cases, instead of coming together and being like, no, like, enough is enough of this shit. Everybody gone. And we just start fresh, basically. And that's the one thing. That's the reason I bring this up, obviously, as we're ending this episode off now, is because 2026 is the first time, and I believe it is over 50 years now, that we have almost the entirety of Senate and Congress up for re-election at one time. It's at least half of the U.S. Senate right now in 2026 up for re-election. The entirety of the congressional side of Congress is up for re-election. That's over 480-something people up for re-election now in 2026 there. We could literally vote out every single incumbent across the board right now and start completely fresh new people at that point. We could primary everybody out of office right now and have a much better constitutional republic when it's all said and done then. But it's up to us to get that done is what it is there. And I think now is the time to do it, honestly. Now is the time to get out that message that we need to primary everybody in 2026, from state level people to especially the federal level at this point. And we completely shake shit up is what it is there. We find the best candidates we can right now for these primaries. We back them as much as we can. If we can't back them financially, then we back them by getting their message out is what it is there. We share their ads, we share their platforms, etc. there. And we prove that these are the people who need to be in power right now. And we get them the votes they need to get in office what it is there. And hopefully this can be enough, honestly, but I don't know. If it doesn't happen, then, I don't know what the next step is after that, man. Might be the ammo box, honestly. It might be a complete revolution at that point then. But, yeah, I'd rather not have that, honestly. I'd rather have it be something where we could do this shit non-violently, if that be the case. Then, I think our founding fathers, truthfully, they understood that, like, yes, sometimes it needs to be taken to violence, but not all the time is what it is there. And if we could do this non-violently, that would be the best thing to fix this country right now. But, there's always that one last truck part we can play at the end of the day if we need to. But it should never come to that until it has to come to that, basically. And that's what I'm saying. Like, that's exactly why I believe that we are heading towards a collision course for that to happen no matter what at some point down the line. But if we do this thing in 2026, it might be enough to just stop it, basically. And just have prosperity for our future generations right now. Because, you guys know me, man. I've said before, I would love to be a father right now. Unfortunately, I'm not right now. And if I could find a woman right now and have a kid in the next year or so, like, I would do everything for that child, honestly, and everything for that woman is what it is there. But as it is right now, I was in a bad headspace yesterday. I'm going to say it like that, and I'll leave it at that, basically. And yeah, that's all I can say about that, basically. I made some calls, though, and I talked with some people about some things, so it's all that matters at the end of the day. And that's the thing. If you're experiencing, depression or whatever the case be, you just need to call somebody, man. You really need to call somebody. And I think it's whether it be a friend, whether it be a relative, whether it be a national hotline is what it is there that exists. So, and I feel like things can get better if we help them get better, basically. But it's going to take all of us. It can't just be a one-man effort at that point. It's got to be everybody, man. It's got to be the network of people. It's got to be groups of people helping each other out. It's got to be us addressing the real problems in the society right now, from big pharma psych drugs to obviously mental ill people need the help they need to get, et cetera, et cetera. And until we address those factors, nothing's ever going to change. Until we address the problem with the criminality in our governments at state and federal levels, nothing's ever going to change. Until we actually back candidates who give a crap about America first and only, nothing will ever change. Until we potentially start running for office ourselves and hopefully getting the financial backing we need to get into office there, nothing will ever change. And it's really that simple. So, hope you guys enjoy this episode. I will be back for the first episode of Slicey Boy Saturday/Sunday tomorrow. I was supposed to get in a cool new gravity knife today, but unfortunately, I guess it got delayed in transit from Amazon to USPS. Instead of Amazon just bringing it to me themselves, they're just like, okay, we'll just wait another day and send it over to the postal service then. So it's whatever. As it was, the package, that knife I showed at the beginning with this episode I got from, I don't know if this dude was just trying to make his shift last it was trying to make the deliveries last his entire shift or what it was there, because, or it could have also been the fact that I know there was rain yesterday and it could have been like some storm damage or something he was trying to go through and like down trees and stuff like that, blocking some of his route or something like that's what it was there, or something that took him so long to get here with the stuff or whatever. But yeah, basically I had a package come in last night that had left the Solon facility, which is about an hour and a half from where I'm at right now is what it is there. And that hour and 15 to an hour and a half basically that would take to get down here is what it is. End up turning into almost 8 hours of what it is there from start to finish. And I'm like, yeah, that doesn't really bode well for you, Amazon, because in that particular case, if they actually sent it USPS instead, it would have just been here at my mail at like 4:30, 5 o'clock yesterday afternoon is what it is then. But instead it was like 3.5 hours later, almost. So, and then as it was, when I because I was kind of like dog looking out the door, like, you know, like paws up kind of thing is what it is there, and just being like, all right, where's the Amazon guy? Where's the Amazon guy? And yeah, as soon as I saw him walking past, I just opened up the door and I'm like, yeah, this is the address you're looking for, dude. So, and I gave him the address that it was then. And then he just, it's funny because the picture he took for the thing was literally like his arm over the package, like taking a picture of the package that he was like going to hand to me. That's what it was. And he was handing it to me then. And I'm like, cool, thanks. So, yeah, I ended up getting that. I got a few other things here too that are pretty cool. But yeah, that's what it is. So, but like I said, it's just, you know, kind of irritating not to know that one knife's going to be here though. But I'm going to go. I think I'm probably going to go further over this blade tomorrow, and then probably we'll also do a couple different neck knives now that I have as what it is, just to show like the size of these knives what it is. Which that's the one thing I do wish about neck knives is that they were like a little bit more of a handle to them, because for me anyway, with my big ass hand, it maybe gets like these 2 fingers or maybe like the 3 finger at most. Like it never gets that full grip on that handle as what it is, because the handle's way too small as what it is there on most of those knives. But I could see if it was like some really like teeny lady's hand or something like that, that'd be a good knife to have, obviously. But unfortunately, I'm not a teeny lady-handed guy as what it is there. So I'm an actual man with big old bear claws. So, but anyway, that's about it for today, though. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Like I said, going full circle back, my personal take on the whole thing with the DOJ is, I think Pam Bonnie's just a gun grabber, honestly, and she wants to be in people's rights to own arms is what it is there, dude. And that being said, like I said, could this be a 5D chess move or even like a 4D chess move for that matter? And it being something where it's just trying to get the left to basically back psychotically insane people to have gun rights is what it is? Possibly. I just don't know. Like I could see if it was like Trump behind that, like maybe it being that, but like I don't know if it is him behind it though. I think it's just, like I said, I think it's just stupidity all around is what it is, dude, where it's just people being like, it's kind of like that emotional reaction is what it is. And that's exactly why you don't pass legislation on emotional reaction is what it is there, because you have to have people in a, you know, legitimate right state of mind and a sane state of mind is what it is in most cases, to where they can be like, no, like, here's the deal. Like, if we do this, it's going to lead to this. If we do that, it's going to lead to that and stuff like that. It's why you don't have, you know, your emotionally charged females out there, you know, trying to sit there and ban guns every chance they get, realize what it is there. Especially when they're all bought and paid for Michael Bloomberg and Gabby Giffords is what it is. So, anyway. But yeah, that being said, I am getting kind of tired right now. It's almost 3 o'clock right now, my time. And yeah, I feel like I need to take an afternoon nap. And then when I get up in a couple hours, I need to go take a shower, so it is there, because I haven't had that in a couple of days. So, been busy doing other stuff, what it is, because I have basically been dealing with the stupid ass SSI people about my disability payouts, and they finally got that fixed now, thank God. So hopefully the next one will actually be the real one, and I'll be able to get my back pay for the last several months now is what it is for the rest of them then. So I should be able to pay rent real time now is what it is now, a couple extra dollars left to do stuff then is what it'll be then. Like pay utilities and internet, so I can keep doing shows like this is what it is. But anyways, but yeah, I definitely need to get some sleep. That is what it is for a little bit here, because I am just so tired and so exhausted. I think a lot of it is due to the fact that we've had, in the last like 48 hours, you've had a lot of different weather changes where it's gotten like super cold the past like 3 or 4 days, down to like even like the 40s or so, like almost like wintertime weather. And then like the last day or so now, it's kind of gotten really humid into like the 60s and 70s because of this rain yesterday is what it was then. So I think that's messing with my joints again, even though I've had my meds in my system now for about a week or so. It's still like messing me up is what it is there. So I don't know. Hopefully my chiropractor next week will be able to take care of my my back to the right spot that it needs to be in though, because she's still kind of half-assing this what it is, unfortunately, and I get why, because the insurance companies ain't paying her jack shit for my adjustments there. But at the same time, it's like they're still paying you something, woman. I'm still obviously making these appointments to come in here and get this done. Like, why don't you just knock me like 4 or 5 more times as what it is there that I actually asked you to do it for is what it is there. So I don't know. I've thought about possibly after this lease comes up now, if I could find a place that I could actually rent down in Columbus or not. We would find a better doctor down there. It would take my insurance and stuff like that. I'm not sure yet though, but the problem is I know with what I get paid out in disability per month, and the full amount there is what it is. I don't think I could be able to find a place without having a roommate is what it is there. And the issue there obviously is that if I found a place on my own down there, I know it would be in the ghetto and I'd probably get shot to death in my sleep was what it would be then. Versus if I were able to find a roommate or something down there, I'm not so sure that they wouldn't try to fuck me on disability payouts again is what it is there, because it would be like, oh, you're living with somebody else now or whatever, and it's like, because I have to, people kind of thing is what it is. So I don't know, unless of course they could fix a Section 8 thing, I could just get a Section 8 voucher or something then maybe and find a place there locally or something like that though. But I do like this area a lot is what it is. Like, not where I'm at right now obviously, but like in general, like Stark County, Ohio is what it is here, because I pretty much lived here my entire life is what it is. And of course I lived in Franklin County for a couple of years there, but that's a different story together. I never really liked that place anyway. So plus it's just, I don't know, I think there's too much noise is what it is. Like right now, like I can just sit here and like, like there might be like a car or two driving through or whatever. And as long as there's not trains running, like it's pretty, like it reminds me of my old house is what it is there, where I was able to just take a nap at any given time basically, because there was like no noise on that road is what it is there. And that was the thing, like knowing that it was like a side road there, like back at the old place, man, like that's when like some super suspicious shit's going down, because if there's like anybody that comes up the road at that point, you're just kind of like, who is this person? Where are they going to? Kind of a thing. Especially if it's at night there is what it is. So whereas over here now it's like there's like 30 something people live in these complexes here is what it is. So yeah, people coming in and out every every hour of the day basically is what it is there. Because I think there's people that work first, second, and third shift here is what it is. So, and of course, as I say that, I'm literally hearing a fucking train whistle now is what it is. God damn these fucking trains. Every time, dude, I swear to God, I'm like willing in like phantom train noise or something at this point. Like it's just like the ghost trains coming through and being like, haha, fuck you. So I don't know. I'm obviously making a joke on that one, but not really though, because there is like serious train noise is what it is there. Like that one was kind of like a faint one though, but still it's like, I don't know. I heard an interesting one, I think it was Wednesday night. I was watching that Nightmare Hunters podcast, and they were talking about, I guess there is the Lincoln Death Train, I think is what it's called, where if you're out in certain places around the time of what was Lincoln's assassination back in April of the 18 whatever's there is what it was. He was president of the United States there at the time. I think they said it was like 3 weeks or something, or maybe a month or so. It was a train that was going down the tracks there of different states and stuff like that. It was almost like a parade kind of train, but it was a funeral procession train is what it was basically. It had Lincoln's body, I believe, entombed is what it was there for like viewing of stuff by people and whatnot. And I guess to this day now, you've had people that have had like ghostly sightings of this train around like April of every year is what it is then. So it's pretty crazy. But it makes sense, honestly, because again, like, you look at how our society is and how when you have like, the different like limestone and granite and all these other things that can like, keep energy basically is what it is there. Like it makes sense why there's so many of these like places that were our founding parts of our country's history that are now in a position where they are, for all intents and purposes, basically just like hotbeds of ghost activity is what it is there. And especially when you bring in like the emotional raw energy of, like bloody battles like Gettysburg and stuff like that, it makes sense why that area is like just this crazy area of ghost activity, basically. So I think I just heard the mailman go too, by the way, which is interesting because it's only 2:50 right now. So, because usually they don't come around until like 4:40, 5 o'clock somewhere in there is what it is. But anyway, I went out this morning and grabbed a bunch of mail from the past several days now, and it was interesting because some of the stuff they said was going to be delivered here from that were the people that lived here before I did. I guess they finally figured out their shit doesn't even be delivered anymore, is what it is, and they stopped delivering their stuff, is what it is now. And it's just my thing, and then like whatever the resident thing would be or whatever, like thing like that, which that's cool. And I'm definitely going to make sure that I get my mail today is what it'll be then, or tomorrow whenever they're going to deliver the other one then. I'm not sure if they're going to deliver I'm not sure if the package that's coming in though, if it's going to be an actual package, or if it's going to be like, because it could be like a little teeny box that might be able to just fit in my mailbox down there is what it is. Or it could even be like a bag that they just fold over and like shove in the fucking box or something like that then. So I would hope they don't do that though, because I know there's other stuff supposed to deliver tomorrow too. So I would hope that that they just choose to put it on my doorstep then instead of, in the box there. Actually, that was an interesting one too, going back to the Amazon thing. So UPS delivered something too yesterday that was a different thing that was supposed to be part of that whole set of items or whatever, but it was only through them or something for some reason. And that was the first time I ever had my doorbell camera go off then, because the UPS guy actually opened up the door to hit the motion sensor that it was then, which I think is so weird that like apparently you have to do that there for those blinks to actually respond then. So I don't know if that's just like not a good enough camera or what it is there, because it's very weird that it has to have like a door being pulled open for it to like activate basically, instead of like somebody just walking by will activate it then or whatever. So, because I know there's another one I got, obviously the motion camera that's behind the door here inside the apartment. That one, if somebody walks by, it'll actually pick up the motion there. Hell, it's picked up. I mean, I've done like a flashlight before in here, and it picks up like the motion of the flashlight basically, because it's like any change or whatever, it'll just pick up then. Like even if I just walk close enough to it, if I don't go on camera or whatever, then like it'll just pick up my motion of my shadows and stuff like that's what it is there. So it's like, I don't know why the actual doorbell camera doesn't do that too then. I guess maybe it's because it's battery power or something, like I don't know. But, or it's just like a lesser quality infrared or something. I don't know, man, but it's weird. So it's kind of annoying too for that matter then. Because there's definitely times I would like to have that pick up a motion detection or whatever there, but it doesn't do it obviously. So, but at least now I know it doesn't work though. But then that being said, like if I'm awake or whatever and I see the person there too, like I could just see there's somebody like right there is what it is then before it would even like ding on me or whatever then. So, but anyway, but yeah, it is what it is. I'm not exactly sure what time I'm going to be able to do the stream tomorrow is what it is there, because I'm supposed to hang out with my cousin and do a few things. So specifically I'm going to go to the store and get some groceries again. So we're hopefully going to go do that is what it is then. And then anything else, I might just be a little bit later then. So it might be more like, I think I set it for around 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon is what it is, but it might be more like 5 or 6 then, depending on what time we end up having to go out and then get the stuff and come back, and then we'll put it away and everything then. So, but yeah, I've done I finally got a thermometer in place there though, so I can actually, if I do the, because I realized the other day I still have another thing of pork chops that I never cooked in the air fryer that I ended up throwing in the that's about a week ago or so. I threw them in the freezer before they went bad, basically. Which my fridge is basically a freezer too at this point. Like you probably were still good in there, I'm guessing. But either way, I threw them in the freezer to get frozen. Then I got to thaw them out again because I'm going to use them this weekend. Is what it is then. And I want to try them with that thermometer. Is what it is to see if that thermometer actually show if they're like internally good or if I got to hold them for another 5 or 10 minutes there, because I know the last time I did them, it tasted good to begin with, but the problem was when I cut it like fully open into like a bunch of chunks as it is then, is when you can start seeing like quite a bit of pink inside of the meat is what it is there, to where it was like maybe just like slightly undercooked. Like it was still edible, obviously, but like especially with pork like that, you definitely want to have that like a fully like white look basically on there, because otherwise you can get like serious food poisoning from like undercooked pork as it is there. So, which speaking of that, I actually found a pretty hilarious meme the other day. If I can grab it here real quick, let me see if I can find it real fast, because it has to do with the there it is. Okay. Yeah, it had to do with the good old Islam here in America, which was this place called Little Pig's Genuine Pit Barbecue Sandwiches, and their sign, Ramadan Special Pulled Pork Sandwiches, $3. Muslims eat free. That's good stuff. Fuck Islam, seriously. They're a bunch of scumbags. And their bullshit takeover now is getting worse and worse, it seems like. I know there was some feds that went into, I think it was Dearborn Heights, Michigan the other day, which I want to say is in the heart of Rashad Tlaib's congressional district there. And the only reason her ass is even in power is because of all those fucking Islamic terrorists there is what it is. Nope, looks like the kids are getting home from school now because I heard the bus braking system a second ago there. I've noticed that recently. It seems like, I don't know what's going on with these buses around here. I don't know if there's like some weird like half-day preschool stuff going on with one of these kids or what it is, because there's one that comes about 12:30 or so and drops somebody off. So I'm not sure if that's like that or if it's like almost like a DH kind of thing where they just go way early in the morning and then they just have like maybe like a 6-hour thing at like a DH alternative school, so it is there or something. But it's very strange either way. And then, yeah, the regular school buses tend to come here around like 3 o'clock or so is what it is. So, which that's just another reason to not be here after next April, so it is, because I want to be in a place that I don't have to deal with, like, you know, being around a bunch of kids, basically, is what it is there. And having to deal with, like, kids playing outside while I'm trying to take a nap inside, basically, what it is there. So, I mean, granted, it'd be one thing if I was a father and they were my kids doing that stuff, but it's like, yeah, it's just some random neighborhood kids, like, yelling and screaming. It's like, shut the fuck up, kid, I'm trying to take a nap over here. So, anyway, but yeah, like I said, though, I'm not sure how I'm kind of torn on, you know, where I kind of lay when it comes to the whole debate here about the trans thing. I think there's better ways to go about it, honestly. And like I said, I think we really need to start addressing Big Pharma's role in all the stuff so it is there, from the psych drugs, the trans drugs, everything else for that matter, and start holding these fuckers criminally accountable so it is there, as well as the politicians that keep pushing these gun-controlled bans that then lead to more massacres because they've disarmed American citizens, what it is there, from being able to arm ourselves against these psycho nuts, what it is then. So, anyway, but yeah, that's about it for today. And like I said, I'll be back sometime tomorrow for the first episode of the Slicey Boy series, where we discuss knives of some kind. I think what most likely the series is going to cover now, it's going to be like 1 to 3 knives at maximum. It'll be about probably like a 20-minute stream or so, give or take, maybe a half hour at most. And we'll just basically do the ins and outs of whatever the knife is, and then just go over and do like different kinds of testing with it. You know, paper cut test, maybe a piece of cardboard, cut through a piece of cardboard with it we can. Different sharpness things and stuff like that. Obviously discuss the steel quality and stuff like that. And then just go from there, basically what it is then. So, because I think there's a lot of good knives. They're on Amazon, they're under the $20 mark, and there's obviously a lot of other kind of crappy knives is what it is there that aren't quite as good quality steel with them as what it is then. So, and I think I'm going to if I ever do buy anything in the future, then it's probably just going to be like, really, it's going to be like this cut of like, must be like D2 and above or something like that, or like pretty close to D2 is what it is then. So, but anyway, but yeah, that's pretty much it for the day, though. I hope you guys enjoyed this stream, and I'll see you all on the next one. Have a good one. Stay safe. Always be carrying. Always be armed. Always be ready. Always know where your exits are, and be situationally aware of your surroundings and who is around you, because you never know what's going to happen. You never know what could pop off. You never know what kind of psycho could be lurking, you know, even behind you in a checkout line for that matter. So you always keep your for everything, man. You could always be on that low grade tier of, you know, just being like, okay, here's this people here, here's this people here, exit there, exit there, exit there. Okay, we're good. And then of course always be, you know, carrying at that point, you know, whether it be a gun or whether it be a gun and a knife, or whether it be a gun, a knife, and some pepper spray, or whether it be all these things together. You know, obviously check your local laws for that kind of stuff, because, you know, you don't want to get hammed up and lose your rights because some fucking dickhead piece of shit Democrat puts in some bullshit unconstitutional law or whatever there. That restricts your right to carry is what it is. So, but yeah, basically carry where you can and have alternatives to carry where you can't, basically what it is there. So until later, I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace out.